Hello, I'm the lawn therapist, and today we are going to go over some fall fertilization, but we're going to do it a little bit different. If you look behind me here, there's our free fertilizer. It's a high carbon source of organic matter that is free for me with the trees that come down around my yard. I have 3 maple trees and about 15 black walnut trees, some apple trees, and I have a nice wood line that also drifts leaves in. A neighbor has a large oak tree that drops leaves, but that actually drops more in the winter time, so it's more of a spring fertilizer, I guess. I also can use the pine needles as a source of carbon. In reality, if you break it down so that the leaves of the grass are poking up through and you can get the leaf tissue mulched up enough, what happens is that it will drop down beneath the blades of grass. Once it gets to the soil surface, it does a type of slow composting, and the microbes and the worms eat it. During the fall, it actually will break down pretty significantly, and then in the spring it'll be more or less gone. I've done this for about 6 years in this property, and every time I do it, the following year, I require less water, the soil becomes richer, the grass becomes thicker and healthier, and it's not because I'm dumping loads of Scott's fertilizer or anything like that. I'm improving the soil, I'm improving the soil structure, I'm more or less composting a resource that people drool over in my area for their gardens, but instead of bagging it up, composting it, mixing it into the garden, I'm more or less mulching it up, breaking it down to small bits, improving the surface area to allow those leaves to break down quickly and put them in a profile of the grass where it doesn't smother the grass. If you look behind me, I have plenty of leaves, and if believe it or not, I've done this in 4 or even 5 inches of leaves, and there's a couple different ways you can do it. Now I'm going to demonstrate right now with a push mower. Now it's a mulching mower, so it makes sense. You mulch up the leaves, but I also have a John Deere lawnmower that's a side discharge. Well, there's a kind of a neat little trick I've discovered with the side discharge. You might have noticed in one of my other videos with the leveling the lawn using coration, dethatching, just kind of knocking things down and spreading things nice and even. I did a circular pass with the side discharge. And so you constantly blow these leaves in to the center pass. So you hit the leaves with one pass and it pushes all those mulched leaves over, and then you hit those same mulch leaves over that are also mixed up with the existing leaves in that next pass, and you keep tumbling it along. You keep mulching those leaves up, and then eventually you'll get a pile in the middle. Well, you say, well, how is that going to help you? It's a big old pile of mulched leaves. Well, that leaves is like confetti at that point. So what you do is you run through that pile, and it will send half those leaves one way, and then you start circling back the other way. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to hit half the leaves, half that pile, and send it to your right. Turn back through, hit that pile of leaves that is still there, the other half, and send it to the other side. So what you're going to do is circle it out and constantly hit those leaves again, spreading it out further and further and further. And what's neat is because the leaves that you're hitting are being sucked up on the top of the grass. So every time you hit the leaves, there's going to be leaves that are confetti size, and it will drop in between the grass blades and to the ground. Well, those won't get sucked up, and you'll keep pushing them out further and further and further. You can do section of the yard that's like 2,000, 3,000, and then do another section, and then do another section. That way you can kind of control it, because there is a little bit of concentrations where you're rolling more leaves in one area, but you can kind of offset that a little bit with a mulching lawnmower. Now I don't want to do my whole lawn with this because it'll take me forever. Now, but it does do good in general. And if I have a smaller area, like for instance, right behind me, this is right underneath the tree, I could quickly do this. I'm going to give you a little quick demonstration, and we'll come over after to have a look at what the grass actually looks like. Now, it's okay to do 1 or 2 passes. If there's still leaves sitting on top, you can keep knocking it down. And then, believe it or not, it'll settle. The wind, it's raining. I mean, it's fall here. So it will settle down as the days go on. And then, of course, more leaves will fall. And you just do it again. Just like you were cutting your grass throughout the year. If cutting grass is any harder than this, I'd be shocked. Because in reality, I do this every 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. And I'm not breaking my back using a rake. I have a leaf blower. I take that leaf blower and blow the leaves into the grass, and then I just mulch it up. It's just so easy, and it enriches the soil. It turns your lawn soil into that garden soil that everybody likes, and incrementally over the years, it just enriches it further and further. So why don't I just do a quick pass here to demonstrate my thought process, my technique, and my money saving way of doing it. Not to mention, my back appreciates it. All right, now let's have a look at that grass. Now, if you see here, I did 2 passes on the right through here, on this side, and while I only did 1 pass on this side. Now, this will be sufficient. Keep in mind that I'm going to continue having leaves drop down from that tree and from that tree. So even if I decide that I just had time to do 1 pass really quick, it's sufficient, because in a few days that's enough grass surface tissue so that you're not smothering the grass. But it's sunny today and it's not raining, unlike a lot of days in Michigan here. During the fall, we'll get several days of just drizzle, cold weather. It's a nice day here, and then we'll get more rain and then a few nice days. So right now is a beautiful day. The leaves are dry. They're fairly dry. Now, it did rain a little yesterday, but if you look right through here, I mean, you can't even see the grass. Now, it's not smothering the grass at this point, but it's not helping the grass pull nutrients from the sun. They can't photosynthesize well, so it can't pull the nutrients and the sugars from the photosynthesis at this point. Now, at these temperatures, it's been mostly in the 40s and 50s, and so what happens is the grass stops growing up and it starts pulling all of its nutrients into the root system, and then it will have plenty of health nutrients for the spring to come up. Yeah, I got a phone call. This is not a perfect system because I have 3 kids, and what happens is if I mulch all of the leaves into the grass before they have time to make a big pile, and play around in it a little bit, they get mad at me. So I'm not going to do all these leaves. In fact, I reserved a little bit of these leaves for today to use the leaf blower to make a little pile so they can play around. But again, I'm going to take that pile of leaves afterwards, mulch it up, spread it out, and watch it disappear in front of my eyes. Again, this is free. And it definitely improves your soil over time. And ideally, what do you want? Healthy grass because you're micro-feeding it, the minerals as a spoon feeding? Or do you want to have a grass that's growing in a soil that you fed over years of good management to improve the soil profile, the nutrient holding capacity by using organic approaches and just good cultural practices? Because I know if I didn't mulch these leaves up and I just left them there, theoretically they would break down and it would enrich the soil, but it would smother out the grass. And so we just have to tweak the environment a little bit, make the leaves that are sitting on top of the grass small enough so that it can settle beneath those grass blades. Again, it's just a little bit of a management practice that I found very beneficial. Now, people will shy away from certain leaves and certain materials. For instance, I have black walnut trees. Well, they produce an interesting compound in the leaf tissues that will kind of prevent some of the other living organisms, the plants underneath them, from growing well, which is true, but Kentucky bluegrass and fescues are not on that list of sensitive objects. In fact, they're tolerant of that. And in the end, once the worms eat them, it's still organic matter that's then broken down, and those compounds that prevent the other weeds and stuff from germinating and growing and competing against those black walnut trees, it doesn't exist in a lingering effect. The more you break them down, the faster it breaks down with the microbes. And if you keep cycling that sort of environment on a year-to-year basis, it happens faster and faster. The first year I did this, it looked like garbage. It looked like my whole lawn was just some grass clippings that were sticking up, and everything was brown. I mean, it wasn't that impressive, but the grass wasn't as healthy back then. The healthier the grass and the healthier the soil that the grass is living in, and the less maintenance you have in the long run. I'm looking at shovelfuls of soil that used to be just loose sand and bits of clay. The deeper I dig, and now when I stick a screwdriver in the ground, it sinks right in. When I come out during a rainy night and shine a flashlight on the ground and pull the grass blades over, I see worms running away from me. It's just the coolest thing ever, and it's all organic, and it's lower maintenance for me on a year-to-year basis, and I'm not planning on being able to have to fertilize indefinitely here. The beauty of it is it only gets better, and it grows the soil into a structure that is more viable for the grass. And again, you just have to tweak the environment a little bit. You know, you can, when you cut the grass blades, the top, it sends a hormonal response to the grass saying it can't grow up any higher. I keep getting cut off right here. So it says, well, we'll spread out. If it's a Kentucky bluegrass, she denses up really nice, and it starts filling in bare spots, especially with kids running around, dogs running around, goat carts. That goat cart had done some damage this year. We'll go over that in another video, but it will be fine. It will heal, it will recover, and it will be thick, healthy, and vibrant most of the year. So again, this is not bad, and it's, you can tell that without using any chemical fertilizers, that's still a really healthy turf under there, and I'm contributing it to good practices. I don't spend a lot of money on that. Look, the free leaves, and we just kind of lead into a good monthly type of routine. And this is one of these seasons that I absolutely love because, again, it's a nice way of setting the grass and the microbes and the worms to bed for the winter, and it really has a beneficial effect. Now, another downside is, I'm not getting any leaves for the garden. Oh, well,
grow cover crop in there. I have compost from various other sources courtesy of my chickens. So it's not an end-all technique. You can still collect the leaves for just that. Relocate it, compost it if you don't like it, but it's a resource. It's nothing that you should be ashamed of. It's not trash. For love of God, don't just set it in a trash bag at the end of the road. I mean, at least take it to a composting facility, someplace that has a means of utilizing and storing that stuff to make it a resource for other people. But if you have a yard, if you have a tree, why put the extra effort? I've raked up leaves. That's work. I don't like work any more than I have to. And this is just as hard as mowing your lawn. So as long as you have a little gas and a lawnmower that works, it's not any harder than walking around your lawn and enjoying the few months that we have left, well, in my case, weeks probably, of fairly nice weather. It's ending for us here in Michigan. The grass really isn't growing that much anymore. So the only thing I can do is enjoy the mow up the leaves and watch them disappear, and then you get to enjoy the green grass underneath it a little bit more. So thanks for joining me today on this interesting way of managing your lawn, improving your soil, and benefiting your lawn for years to come by using a simple concept of using the minerals that the tree pulls out of the ground and recycling it back into that ground, and giving you in exchange for feeding those worms, you get worm castings. There's a drawback to that. You get little bumps in your lawn, little ones, little humps and bumps throughout the lawn. But again, it rains and it washes that down, and again, it just keeps improving the soil. It's a wonderful way of cycling things back in and reusing them. And as long as the nutrients and the carbon and the minerals and the resources that is keeping your lawn and your trees healthy, vibrant, and successful come up out of the ground and get cycled back into the ground, that means you don't have to bring extra nutrients, bring extra resources, bring extra amendments from other sources. In essence, I'm taking probably thousands of pounds of leaves from all these trees and integrating it into the soil. I'm bringing in the equivalency of hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of compost in a 3/4 of an acre lawn. And so that is a wonderful feeling that I don't have to buy it. I don't have to do anything more challenging than mow it. And again, my back feels better when I don't have a rake in my hands. So again, this is an economical way of doing it. It's a resource. And I mentioned earlier in the video that my neighbor has this wonderful oak tree. It's giant, in fact, and it will leave a layer of 6 inches of leaves through their yard, which is even bigger than mine, and then those leaves drift over to my yard. And the oak trees, people shy away from oak trees because of they're concerned about acidifying their soil. Well, compost is neutral. If you break those leaves up, they'll break down faster, and then they'll compost into the ground. And how much is compost in acidity? It's neutral. So don't even shy away from oak trees. Well, I would still shy away from the acorns that drop down from the oak trees because you can't really mulch those up in the lawnmower. But you can rake them up. Unfortunately, that'd be an example of a time to pull out the rake. But that's their side, and I don't have to deal with that. That, and there's deer here. And believe it or not, if you let it sit on the ground long enough, a deer will find it and a deer will eat it. And then you have, well, deer droppings. I guess that there's options out there. Again, I like to stress the point that if it comes down on your property, from your property, and you can use it in your property, use it. This is a way of using it that's quite easy. And again, it makes the soil better, it makes the grass better, and it's a resource for you. So consider that when people are starting to buy bags of winterizing fertilizers. Eventually this will lower your fertilization requirements. If you're not hammering things with fertilizer, things grow slow, consistent, and vibrantly. But at the same time, a little bit of input is needed to get you there initially. Like I said, when I first did this with my lawn 6 years ago, the lawn wasn't very healthy. The leaves were not being digested by the microbes in the soil. The worms weren't as vibrant and active at that point. There's lots of just bad soil, bad practices for this lawn for a long while. It was at one point high maintenance with good store-bought fertilizers, and then as soon as you stop those, it goes downhill in a heartbeat because it's not constantly getting that mineral supplementation that it's not getting from the ground. What's kind of interesting I discovered this year is I've used urea in small doses, putting about a half a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. It's a fast releasing fertilizer, but it's only a half a pound of nitrogen. And it was evenly distributed in an area on my front lawn, which I've been maintaining with a little bit of soybean meal and mulching up the clippings and constantly being aware of the organic matter that's going into the soil. I've been actually dumping leaves over there and mulching them in because I don't have a lot of trees. And that half a pound of nitrogen that was fast release was actually surging growth, like to a point where the grass was actually turning a lime green color and growing rapidly fast. Now there's so much organic nitrogen and organic compounds and minerals that are being held on to by the composted or composting process, or breaking down process of cycling the grass clippings into the soil. And I've been adding biochar to my lawn for the last couple of years. I've done humic acid treatments using Anderson's 40-pound bags of granular DG humic acid, which is a high 70% concentration of humic acids. And over the last couple of years, I've been noticing that I haven't been needing the urge to go fertilize because the grass is so healthy and vibrant. Now that's taken about 3 or 4 years since I started integrating the biochars. I've been integrating the humic acids. I've been integrating organic fertilizers such as the soybean meal, and that has drastically decreased my fertilization needs because it's dark green, healthy, and growing fast. Why would I say, well, if it's time for spring fertilizer, time for summer fertilizer, time for fall fertilizer? I did not fertilize at all this fall because I put some soybean meal down in the spring, late spring, summer, and really I didn't put down much at all. And if you look at this grass, that is thick, green, healthy grass. And if you look behind me, where the leaves aren't quite as dense, where a lot of toys are, but you can see thick, green, healthy grass. What I'm trying to stress there is the better your maintenance practices and trying to be aware of the soil health, like an agricultural scientist would be looking at the soil structure, soil depth, what types of things that they could use and do to improve their soil for their crops. Well, my crop is my lawn in this situation. The beauty of it is that I'm not pulling the nutrients away from it ever. I can cycle the grass back into the soil, keep pushing the roots down, keep doing good cultural practices, and then you will have a thicker and thicker soil profile that's healthier, crumbly, it's not compacted. I did not core aerate back here. I didn't dethatch back here. I only did that earlier in the year to help level out the front lawn a little bit and to do a little experimentation to see the effectiveness in it. And the things that I do, I mean, it tore it up. It was looking awful for about 2 weeks, and And now you couldn't tell at all that it was damaged from that process. Again, because I've been having strong root systems. I've been emphasizing using resources from a feed supply store. I mean, it's only $22 for me to buy a 100-pound bag of soybean meal, and that has a really good nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and a lot of micronutrient breakdown from those that meal. And the wonderful thing about it is it can be spread in a regular spreader. I have a Scott spreader. I have a bigger Lesco spreader, and it goes through those just like a regular fertilizer would. And again, it's not a fast release. And so I can put it down in the spring, I can put some down in the summer. It breaks down and feeds the microbes and the worms throughout that whole time. I don't have an irrigation system, and our summers in Michigan are moderate. There's a few weeks where we don't get much rain. It can be in the 80s, 90s consistently. But I've only had to water the lawn, I think, probably 3 days this year. 3 days, and it never went dormant. It did slow down its growth during the summer. I was still cutting it though. It was so healthy that it was still thriving well, while everybody else in my neighborhood had long since gone dormant, and which is fine. But again, it was still thriving with minimal inputs. I watered it a day, a week for a few times. I did a deep watering. If it hadn't rained in 2 weeks and it was starting to turn a bluish gray color, obviously it was stressed and it was out of water in its root system. The soil had used up all of its water reserves, so I watered it heavily. I gave it at least 3/4 of an inch of water for the grass, and if there was trees in that area, you could tell that the grass would start going dormant even faster, partially because these large maple trees, these pine trees that I got, these walnut trees, even though they shade the soil, they still, along their drip line, will absorb the water. They need water too. That's another layer of photosynthesis that's happening up above the grass, and that requires water to be successful. So in those situations, I actually watered, probably 2 inches of water. I watered for a good 8 hours with 8 gallons per minute sprinkler heads and 6 gallons per minute sprinkler heads. Another thing is I also kind of monitor my well when I'm watering those time frames. If I can push out with my particular well 14 gallons at least, I will have an interesting effect with the water pressure. It doesn't cycle down and cycle up. It stops the cycling process of the well. So to my well, the pump, it thinks that you flush the toilet once because it turned on once. That's the stress point for a pump, is turning on and turning off and turning on and turning off. So as long as I can monitor the flow rate, the pressure of the water, and the amount of times it cycles on and off, I can have a single cycle and water the entire lawn systematically and water underneath these trees aggressively, so that not only you have enough water for the grass, but you have enough water for the trees. People forget that the trees are also needing water too, and you want a healthy ecosystem, not just for your green grass. You want to make sure that the layers underneath it, the microbes, the worms, they have enough water and moisture and nutrients to have plenty of growth and activity during those time frames. It's actually it's warm. Microbes and bacteria and fungi and worms are plenty active in those time frames, with the temperatures being 70, 80s, 90s. As long as there's enough moisture in the soil for that to happen. And you can let it go dormant, but that microbial activity will also go dormant, slow down anyways, and then you'll have a slower cycling of that nutrients, which isn't the end of the world. But at the same time, if you can kind of manage that aspect along with keeping your grass healthy and successful, it will continuously build soil. Those roots will constantly pull nutrients and sugars from the sun. It will kind of feed the microbes, the fungi in the soil that are exchanging minerals for those sugars from the grass, and they will continuously produce a carboning effect of the soil, and the soil will get deeper and thicker and lusher, and it can happen slowly. And in this situation, I feel like it's happening faster because all the studies I've read were for farmers. Well, they're pulling nutrients from their property every time they harvest their crops. Well, I'm not harvesting much. I think the only time I actually remove any thatch or debris from my lawn is really when I'm trying to do a soil leveling type of activity without having to put more soil into it by doing the core aeration and dethatching. That organic matter that's actively breaking down actually gets in my way. But I take it and I compost it, and I can take that compost and reapply it to the lawn. In this situation, I'll turn it into vegetables for next year. So it's not the end of the world. I'll have to put a little bit more input in that area that I had pulled that nutrients out of, which I'll probably do more so with soybean meal, not necessarily the ureas and the slow release poly coated fertilizers and that sort of thing. Again, I feel like that's more like giving somebody just the bare minimum of vitamins in a vitamin capsule to make them live healthy, instead of giving them meat and potatoes and salads and pastas and things that actually have a nutrifying effect on your system. People can live on vitamins, I suppose, if you monitor things out and you high maintenance things. I've seen people try to do low calorie diets, and again, that's a lot of maintenance. This is the soil, this is grass. I want low maintenance, and by doing this type of approach with cycling things back in, making it bulk organic matter, I mean, putting 100 pounds down of soybean meal. Remember, that's about 7 pounds of nitrogen. It's all organic. It's all slow release. If I did a 6,000 square foot area, I mean, you're already over a pound of nitrogen in that one area. Now, that will slowly break down over a longer period of time, but at the same time, like I said, you just give it a little bit. Give it a half a pound of nitrogen. Spread that out over a 15,000 square feet. And again, you still have a slow release, consistent, continuous nutrients breaking down in the soil, giving the grass something to absorb after the microbes and the worms have a chance to feed it. I'll do some more discussing that probably next year in the spring. Like I said, there's no signs of discoloration or vibrancy or anything like that with my grass right now, so I really don't have any justification to add more inputs when it's not necessary. You overload the soil with nutrients, it will tend to leach out. So if you can keep doing it in a slow, consistent manner, it will leach into the microbes will break it down, and then it won't have a substrate where it will leach into my groundwater. It won't leach out of the nutrient zone for the grass. The grass is having deeper and deeper roots. The soil will continuously get deeper and deeper and deeper, and those inputs become less and less important because you're building a strong soil, not necessarily a strong grass. You can put any type of grass on there and it will be strong at that point. Now, there are some grasses I prefer because, well, they can heal themselves. They can spread. I have kids that They don't care as much about the grass as I do. They just like playing on it. That's what a kid likes. And that's what I like the kids to do. Now, I do gripe if I see big swaths of grass that have been torn up and flung over to the side because they're doing donuts with the go-kart. Again. So, again, it's easy to repair. They're having fun. And that soil is healthy enough for it to quickly recover, even in those harsh conditions, and even during the hot summers, and even during the wet falls and the wet springs. So there we go. Thank you very much for joining me today on my discussion on how to manage the leaves in an efficient manner and use it as a resource of nutrients, fall fertilization, and keep rehabbing that lawn with us. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining me, the lawn therapist. And now go rehab your lawn. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video. You can see my enthusiasm for this topic. It can get me rambling on about the information that I have acquired and would love to share with everyone.